Hello everybody, welcome to the Wilderness for the Mind exhibition. Tonight we're going to take you on a tour of the show. We've got some of the artists here with us, so they're going to talk about their works, and we've also got the co-founders of the Wilderness Art Collective who are going to talk a little bit more about the work of the collective. Hopefully you'll be joining us on YouTube. We're streaming live, fingers crossed, and also on Facebook. So please leave us comments and questions, and our plan is to spend about an hour touring the show, talking with the artists, and then at the end we're going to stay on for about 15-20 minutes to answer any of the questions that you've been posting throughout the show. So yes, please interact with us. So first, Catalina and Sam from the who've co-founded the Wilderness Art Collective with Luke Walker are going to talk a little bit about the work. So Sam, maybe could you kick us off just by talking a little bit about how the Wilderness Art Collective was established?
Yeah, hi. I guess firstly, actually, I just want to say a thank to you guys, the creation team of this show. So the team that created the show are all collective artists, so it's just been absolutely wonderful to watch them take the helm and put on this amazing show. So thank you guys. So just a quick little thing about the collective. So the collective was founded at the beginning of 2019, so we've been going for about a year and a half now. It does actually feel a tad longer than that, considering everything we've managed to achieve and how we've grown over the last year. So we're excited to see how that's going. So the collective was founded, as Claire mentioned, by three artists, so myself, Luke M. Walker and Catalina Christensen. All our work is inspired by the natural world, but we're actually, our main drive and our main passion is the arts in general, and we all really do believe that art offers a great platform to discuss current issues and things that are going on in the world. So obviously our collective is all about the natural environment, the plight of the natural world. So bringing artists together has always been our goal. One of the most important things actually that we wanted to highlight was when you bring lots of people together, it's amazing what you can achieve. So by uniting all these artists under one banner, I think we can actually achieve some really wonderful things and discuss about the plight of our natural environment. We're really keen as a collective also to support our artists. As an artist myself, sometimes it can be quite lonely. I guess you're in your studio quite a lot. And actually having a platform that you can go towards and talk to people, I think, is a really wonderful benefit for artists. So we're really proud that's something that we're offering. And on a more practical level, we really want to offer exhibitions, a space for artists to interact with each other, to inspire each other, and hopefully open up residencies and other opportunities in the future. So we're really excited to see where that can go and what we can achieve as a collective, especially offering a platform for us to utilise art to discuss and create messages around a natural environment, because I really do believe that there is a space for art in that wider discussion. Art offers a wonderful opportunity to discuss our messages around the natural environment in a wider context. So I think we're all really excited about what we can achieve. So watch this space. So hopefully we'll be doing some wonderful things in the future. And I think Catalina's just going to say a few words about our artists and messages in general.
We at the moment are 40 incredible creatives from various locations in the UK, from the Isle of Harris and the Lake District to Devon and Cornwall, from Bristol and Sussex to London. There is a variety of artists. There is painters, photographers, sculptors, weavers, filmmakers, writers. It's great diversity among all our artists. They all use different mediums and different ideas, but we are all sharing the same values and the same ethos, and we are all united because of the interest to the nature, to the environment, and to preservation. The collective is an excellent platform to discuss and inspiration among each other, but also through our works, we hope to inspire people to value and engage with the natural world. There is also huge potential to create valuable collaborations between the members, but also with other organizations. In this way, we hope to create a way to share our stories and our concerns and hopes for the future. We are also looking at ways to get more involved, not just with the general public, but also with communities and institutions and schools that have the same interests and goals as us. We believe that as a group, we are stronger and can make a big difference. Luke Walker, the third co-founder, unfortunately couldn't be with us today, so he sends his apologies, and he sent me a little thought that he would like me to read to you. The current situation has focused the importance of our role as custodians of the planet, and now how the common purpose to try and unite to combat the pandemic. It is also presenting opportunities for artists to show how a deep engagement with the natural world and shared understanding can also unite us, hopefully, to work together and to protect the environment and affect change. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much, both of you, for introducing the work of the Wilderness Art Collective and for supporting us during this period. It's been great to have this kind of opportunity to work together to do something positive in such a difficult time. So thank you. And so I'll just tell you now a little bit. I knew that would happen. That's why I shouldn't mute myself. So sorry about that. So yeah, the Wilderness for the Mind show brings together the work of 31 artists, and we're highlighting the connection between nature and mental well-being. We're all approaching this in different ways. So some of the different questions that we're looking at is how nature and art can help nurture the mind, how we visualize wild places in our memories and imagination, how to be more mindful and present in nature, and also how the lockdown situation has affected our mental well-being, our art practices, and our connection to the local environment. We've got, alongside the online exhibition, which is now up, we've got a programme of events, including interviews, studio visits, and artist demonstrations that will be coming through daily throughout the show period. So in terms of, because we've sort of brought together works from all sorts of different artists, we thought to help you guide you through the exhibition, we've placed people into rooms, or placed silhouettes in rooms. So, and these are themed. So room 1 is about tracing journeys, mapping memories and experiences. Room 2 is about moving elements, so the wind, water and waves. Room 3 is eroding horizons, which looks at rocks, earth and pigments. And room 4 is life's intimacies, touching on flora and fauna. So tracing journeys, room 1. This room contains traces of journeys in space, time, memory, and imagination. Walking through the environment, finding objects, accumulating residues, and collecting data, presenting fragments, imprints, and impressions and pathways. So Louise invites people to draw maps of their memorable walks during the pandemic. Stephen has visualized data from the macro to the micro. Luke has recorded walks along the waterways and green spaces and to the urban extremities of London. Sophie dyes her canvases using local plants, allowing them to accumulate stains and residues as she performs in the environment. Polly displays her canvas in the Thames with traces of the rusty artifacts she's found there. I weave journeys in coloured yarn. Sam's built an interactive virtual map of special places. And Tessa, an avid climber, has captured rocky peaks on vintage maps. So Sam, we're going to have a little talk with some of the artists now. So Sam, thank you again for joining. It would be great if you could just say a little bit about your inspiration for the virtual map.
Yeah, hi. So during the lockdown period, I actually started just a really simple little project where I was drawing daily. This was just because I recognised that people wouldn't have that access to the natural environment that they normally would, and I was really keen to just help bring that back into people's homes. So it started off quite simply, just drawing, but actually the wonderful thing that came out of it was people's replies to me and interactions with me, and just the natural reconnection that people had with their local green spaces, their garden. It just felt like people were just recognizing and noticing nature a lot more, and it was just such a pleasure to see. And I was getting requests for drawings, and along with those requests were the memories that were linked to those places, and it was really emotive to hear some of them, and it just got me thinking about how much our relationship with nature can also be linked to memory and our experiences, and it's quite an emotive topic. So for this exhibition, I've created Placemark, which is a collaborative online piece. As you say, it's an interactive map, so people can explore the map, look at the artwork linked to each location, and also read people's memories linked to those locations. And the idea actually, it's collaborative because I really want people to interact and submit their own memories and request new drawings. So as the work develops and as more people interact with the map and submit their own memories of their own special places, I think it would just be incredibly interesting to start beginning to really look at how our relationship with the natural world around them through a global perspective. And I'm not really sure what will come at the end. Like, I really love to think about where that would develop, and the idea that hopefully we can build quite a lot of memories of natural spaces from around the world and really see people's personal interactions and what they take away from the outdoor spaces and how that improves their mental health on a long-term basis. I just think it's a really interesting subject. So I'm hoping to do future projects based around these memories and our actual connection to the natural world around us. So I'm quite excited actually to see how it will go. It's just been launched, so I think it's running a little bit slow, but bear with us. It will get faster as the weeks go by, but hopefully you'll all take a look. And the link is on, once you go through the website, you can see the link, which is a direct link to the map.
Oh, fantastic. And so people can submit their own suggested places to you then to draw?
Yeah, the collaborative part, and that's the bit that I'm really excited about. I've always wanted to move into more collaborative work. People can request places to be drawn, which they can do directly through the map interface, and they can also submit memories linked to a special location, and those will all be hosted on the map. So as more people interact with the piece, more memories will grow, different memories of the same location. And I think it just be, the more people that interact with the piece, the more interesting and more information we can gather for it. So it's truly interactive. So and the fact that it's online, I'm hoping will also help remind people of those positive memories of being in nature.
Thank you, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing your work. So Polly, are you there?
Yes, hello.
Oh, great, hello. I wondered, so your work is inspired a lot by the Thames, and you go and collect objects there. I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about how you use found objects in your work.
Yeah, so currently with the Thames, I'm specifically interested in what the water leaves behind and also the history of the Thames. So with that in mind, I've collected things that are sort of specifically from the industrial period, like the kind of rusty artifacts and the clay pipes. And in terms of how I've used them, I've been looking at different ways of recording their traces as a way to record the movement of the water and what it leaves behind, and obviously the history in which they're involved in. So this specific piece looks at the imprints that the clay pipes leave behind, and And with the other pieces that I have in the show, the rust pieces, that looks at the color that's left behind. So yeah, that's how I'm using them currently. It's all about their traces and what's left.
Thank you. And I understand also that you use quite a lot of natural pigments in your work. So you were saying about the use of rust. Could you tell us a bit about how you use natural materials and pigments in your work?
Yes, so pigments are just my favorite thing. This piece actually, the one on the I guess it would be on the right, which is grout and uses the clay pipes. That's coloured specifically with pigment that I've collected from the Thames. And I've done a lot of things with collecting pigments and obviously also the objects that I find, but specifically when it comes to the pigments, I'm just fascinated by the idea that you can use the land to depict the land. And it's just so simple because it is the land itself. So I find that really important when creating work about the landscape, to use the things that are within the landscape. And that's why I always like to say that I'm collaborating with the landscape rather than making my own individual work, because for me the land is sort of my artist's palette. And so yeah, the pigments are super important. And I've also made a little watercolor collection of 6 pigments that I found on the Thames, which I'll be releasing very soon. And that again was such an enjoyable project to make, because it's such a wholesome thing to do, to find your own colors and turn them into various paints, and then to give them to people as well, and people can share in that experience.
Oh, thank you. And I understand that also during the show you're going to be giving a demonstration on making watercolors and also pastels. Is that right?
Yes, so I'll be doing one on watercolors. The watercolors actually, I use pigment that I collected on the Thames, and then the pastels I'm using pigment that I collected in St. Ives.
Oh, fabulous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think the tables are going to be turned on me now, and Geraldine's going to ask some questions. Geraldine, are you there? Hello? You're mute.
Am I still mute? Unmute. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, Claire. Thank you very much for a beautiful introduction. Yes, so Claire, can you tell us a bit about your process, about these beautiful weavings?
Yeah, so I basically, they're kind of woven paintings. I don't have any plan when I go into it. So it's kind of just a bit like taking a walk or going on an adventure. And it's a very meditative process. It's a very slow process. And I want to kind of, I want it to look very organic, but it's against a kind of grid. So it's interesting to try and make it look quite free when actually the process is very sort of slow and methodical. And what I'm trying to do is basically trace patterns of subconscious thought and feelings through relationships of color and shape. So it's kind of abstract mental maps.
They're beautiful. I think when you see them on screen, you can't quite judge the size. Could you tell us the size? Because they feel, well, I've seen them in real, and they're very immersive.
Yeah, I guess they're kind of like the size of a body. I think they're about my height, about 5 foot.
That's beautiful. And so you're using natural pigments, and these feel, having seen your other work, these feel very much like watercolors, very layered. Can you tell us something about that?
Yeah, so I guess I do take a lot of inspiration from watercolors, particularly from Turner. I really love his watercolors and I've spent a long time looking at those, and I just wanted to get that sort of translucent feel. I mix the yarns, many tiny different colors, so that you can get very soft transitions. yeah, so it's kind of what I do. And I mean, they are inspired quite a lot by nature, although they're not direct depictions of nature. It is one of the things I'm most fascinated by, so I spend a lot of time looking at rocks and bark and things like that, and it just naturally kind of infuses the works.
That's beautiful, thank you.
Thank you. So the next room is Moving Elements. So this room explores the language of seas, skies and weather, the rippling, frothing, crashing and billowing boundaries of air and water, finding mental flow through immersion in calm, forceful and unpredictable elements, presenting smooth, reflective and disrupted surfaces. So Anthony places his paintings in the landscape, creating a memorial to the lives lost in a shipwreck. Catherine explores the movement of waves in etchings, dance and music. Felicity focuses on stormy seas and breaking waves. Sachs gives us glimpses of his journey sailing across the Pacific. And Geraldine leaves her watercolours out in nature to be affected by the wind and the rain. Laura is a paraglider and she shares her experience of being moved by oceans of air. Helen responds to the might and beauty of nature, creating monumental cloudscapes. Louisa pours paint on the canvas, writing in the complex patterns and rhythms of light on water. Hannah campaigns against plastic pollution and she explores feelings of isolation as she travels aboard a cargo ship. And Lucy immerses us in her wild swimming adventures. So Catherine, are you there? I've told everyone to mute, so I think everyone's muting. Diligently muting. Hello.
Hi.
Catherine. I wondered, this is one of your etchings. I wondered if you could talk about how the wave form informs your work.
Yeah, thank you. It's lovely to be here with you all. Yes, so both water and sound. I'm inspired by walks and actually being immersed in the water. It was quite a powerful experience on a walk, having been at a stone circle. And I turn these into etchings, and it's a double plate etching. So it's been twisted round and overprinted with natural pigment.
Thank you. And you've also included a video in the show, and I'll just give a little glimpse of that. So the video kind of includes dance and music. I wondered if you can tell us a little bit about your collaborative process. And also I understand this is about the sea, so I wondered how you've had to adapt the work for the lockdown situation.
Thank you. This has been very much part of my lockdown experience, has been collaborating with composer Matt Goodison, who has, we've had ideas and images and sounds going back and forth between us. He's a digital sound composer of minimalist music, and I printed my etchings bigger and bigger onto silk and painted on silk as well, and invited dancer Tiliana, who's my daughter actually, who's a contemporary dancer, to come and dance in the woods. And between us, we explored the themes of nature and feeling that we wanted to go further, and we wanted to go to the sea. We have the woods, we're so lucky, and it's sort of become about emotional response and that longing for the sea, or longing to see people or be with people. It's become quite multi-layered, and I'm excited that we're actually having an album coming out on the 20th of June, and also we've got an interactive video and music piece that we're going to put forward for people to enjoy interacting with the music. So it's been quite an extraordinary project really that's come out of this.
Fantastic, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So Helen, hi, are you there, Helen?
Hi.
Hello. So you build these amazing visual, vivid images of place and weather, and I just wondered where you get your inspiration from for these works.
from going out into the countryside. I do a lot of walking and a lot of just going on, you know, camping trips and holidays, and just generally walking at weekends and things. And I just generally just, you know, just capture those images in my mind. I do take photographs, but generally I work from my memory of places.
That's great. And so how do you then, when you get back to the studio, how do you sort of develop those works? And I think you said before that the weather sort of also has a kind of metaphor for mood as well. And so you sort of, how do you bring together both what you've seen in that experience and what you're feeling in that moment?
Well, I think all my work is about escaping, about leaving the present and kind of taking yourself off on a journey in your mind and your memory. And yeah, I really like large scale work, and I like the clouds to be quite ominous, because I think the weather really affects all of us. And I think when the sky's grey and there's big clouds, I think you're much more reflective about your life and about things and about your hopes and dreams. And I really like that kind of imagery that kind of lets you escape into your thoughts.
Thank you. And I understand that you're going to be doing a demonstration during the show and doing a sort of live drawing session. Yeah,
I'm hoping so. I mean, obviously that needs to be worked out, whether it can live stream or whether I'll have to upload it onto YouTube. But yeah, I'm going to do like a 2-hour drawing, quite a large scale drawing.
Oh, brilliant. I'll look forward to that. Thank you.
Thanks.
And Geraldine, you there again? I'm going to play your video. It's a longer video, but we're just going to just have a little snippet of it now, a taster. And so please watch the full video. Yeah, it's a really wonderful kind of combination of the music and of your etching plates, I believe. So would it be possible to say a little bit about your kind of inspiration for combining the music with your works?
Yeah, this particular piece, Úrsge, which means water in Gaelic, was inspired by my walks on Skye originally. I'm a walking artist. I immerse myself in the elements. I love walking in, with and against wind and rain. And I was working along the River Kilmartin on the Isle of Skye. And Stuart Mitchell, the pianist, composed a piece based on this river, the estuary there. And when I heard it, I felt incredibly inspired to combine it. And I brought my ideas, both our works, the music and the original immersion and sketches were the source for further work. And during lockdown, I walked in, yeah, I would call it micro adventures, sort of smaller walks, not as wild and perhaps dangerous at times, because on Skye I go into storms of gale force 8 or 9, and I've been walking, but I've been really looking at, I wake up very early and I look at cobwebs and the dew on vegetation, and they're incredibly beautiful and inspiring, and that's inspired this work.
Oh, thank you. And I believe you're going to have a video or a walking experience during the show.
Yes, it shows how I collaborate with the elements, and in that video, particularly the wind. And yeah, I made a film of all my drawing devices. So to capture the wind, because the wind, you only see it through what it touches, I devised these I made these drawing devices which move in the wind, and I walk with it. So it's my body and the wind, but that will be explained in my video.
And so with your watercolor monotypes, could you say a bit how the wind and the rain affect these?
Yeah, so I'm very passionate about collaboration. So whether it's with musicians or dancers, but I also very much collaborate with the elements, and so immerse myself. And even on my small micro adventures, my little walks, I get totally lost in the beauty of, or the, you know, nature. And I wanted to capture what I saw. So I've been working small scale, and particularly early morning when the lockdown started, there was a lot of frost, and I left my plates out, and the marks, inviting the elements to make the marks, was a beautiful collaboration. And so there's a lot of chance, and I feel that chance, allowing chance into your work, the chance becomes very much part of the work.
Amazing, thank you. And Lucy, are you there as well?
I am.
Oh, hi, Lucy. I'm going to play again. We've got you've got a video. We're going to play a little snippet of it now, but the full video is on the website. Great. I wondered if you could tell us a bit about what we're actually looking at here, because it looks like a kind of wild adventure. But I also wonder, you know, if you are a wild swimmer, how you've been managing in lockdown, because that's one of the things I've really missed is, you know, and I'm sure a lot of people have, is being able to go out swimming. So yeah, could you tell us a bit about what we're seeing and how you've adapted the work?
Yeah, of course. I mean, so when you talk about the feeling of missing swimming and missing the elements, I had the same sensation at the beginning of lockdown, knowing that I was going to be corralled at home for I don't know how long, and in my case with 2 small children. And you've mentioned before that generally my practice is I make wild swims, and then from that experience of swimming I make films, and I also make etchings. And over this summer I was meant to be doing a swim in the Channel, and I was going to make work from that. So when lockdown happened, I had to think again and think how I could make new work at home. And what I took is I wanted to take my feelings of frustration and confinement, which I'm sure lots of people have experienced, and lots of other artists and other people generally, and I wanted to try and amplify them in a piece of work. So what I did is I set up a 10-foot pool in my garden, so really quite small, and I tethered myself with a harness really tightly to the fence. So this meant that I could swim, but every time I swam, I didn't move at all. I remained completely stationary. And with every stroke, I was really aware of the kind of physical confinement in the space that I was swimming in, which of course is in complete contradiction to what I experience when I'm swimming in the sea. Lots of my work is about memory and nostalgia, and I wanted to bring those themes back into this new way of making work. And so what I did, and what you see here as a result of this, is I projected films that I'd made of previous swims in the ocean back into the water, and then swam back into them on a tether. And yeah, it was interesting. It created this sort of doubling, almost a mise en abîme, in which as I went back through the waters, I kind of went back into my own memory, and you can see a shadow of my head on the screen that I followed backwards through time and through memory. So yeah, from that perspective, it was a really successful way of working.
Wow, it sounds really incredible, and such a lot of dedication to your swimming. I'd be interested to know a bit more about like how swimming informs your practice, and also like, you know, what is driving you? Like, what is the feeling that you're really, you know, enjoying, or as you're in the water? What's it like?
That's a really good question. I think for me, so I used to do a lot of walking, and I used to make much more kind of straightforward prints of what I saw in front of me. But I think I began to look at landscape much more as a space to be experienced rather than as a view to be admired. And for me to kind of move into that moment and stay in that moment, aware of the elements. Swimming and wild swimming was really the best way I could do that, because when I'm swimming, it is exhilarating and sometimes, frankly, quite terrifying. And as I'm swimming, I'm very conscious in a physical way of temperature, wind, tide, current. And it forces me to really stay in the experience in a way that I haven't really experienced in any other way of working, making work in landscape. And I can then take that experience back into the studio, and it's the desire to try and map and relive that really intense experience that encounter that I've had in the ocean that drives my practice.
Thank you, that's great. And it just really interests me, because I think, I mean, I certainly struggle a lot to be present, and it sounds like swimming really kind of forces you to just be so present in the moment. And I don't know whether it's the case, but I feel like a lot of artists, the practice is what helps them to find that presence. And so, yeah, it's really interesting to hear about your experiences. So thank you.
I think you've put that really well, Claire. I think that's exactly right.
Good, thanks. Okay. So the next room, room 3, is called Eroding Horizons. This room challenges our relationship with rocks and earth, the desire to find something solid, permanent, when everything changes, shifting, crumbling, eroding to grains from which new life can form in glorious colour. Simon considers the interconnectedness between human and non-human and our relationship with impermanence. Sam's abstract paintings on recycled metal show his interest in geology and what lies beneath the surface. Abigail captures the fragility of rocks with strata and cracks. Catalina's abstract paintings are made with hand-ground natural pigments. Michael is interested in the random chance patterns of nature. Nikolai works to reflect the ancient lunar landscape of the Outer Hebrides. And Peter captures the raw beauty of the wilderness at the planet's fringes. So Simon, hi Simon, are you there?
Hello.
Hi, Simon. I wondered, this object is fascinating and it really has a sense of both rock and flesh. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the relationship that you see there.
Yeah, I think I mean, this is part of a body of work. I think that's important to say, because it doesn't stand out in and of itself as an individual sort of art statement or an autonomous sort of sculpture, really. I see it very much as part of an exploration, part of my studio practice, which is an ongoing sort of investigation, really, around notions of sort of states of being, really. I guess more specifically, this piece, I was thinking around what position rock holds in our psyche. Yeah, that sense of sort of interconnectedness between the human and the non-human.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to ask you what role rocks play in your practice. So yeah, but yeah, it's interesting. I mean, how do you see that relationship between rocks and the psyche then?
Well, I just think it's there. I mean, it sets up this sort of great sort of resonant sort of discourse. Rock time is long, isn't it? And we are so transient in our own sort of human time. So by sort of pulling together animate and inanimate objects, rock and flesh, natural and man-made, I guess I'm just opening up those questions about what it means to be, and furthering my own sort of understanding of our own sort of transience, that we sort of live within the world.
Yeah, and I guess you've also got a film in the show, and that also brings on some of these themes that you're talking about time and transience. Could you talk a little bit about your film Genesis?
Yeah, the film, I guess, sort of extends those thoughts and themes I've been working with for years. It's a very slow, immersive film. In some ways, it's a bit like a self-portrait, actually. it's a, I mean, what at first looks like as a benign boulder sat in an arcane landscape, it very, very slowly takes on human characteristics. So I guess I'm talking about the sort of the deep geological time, which endures, and the sort of very quick human time, which passes, I think, incredibly quickly, and it's immense fragility. But I think something else I'm sort of thinking about a lot over the last few years is, I mean, it just seems pertinent to me that in the age of the Anthropocene, so how we sort of tend to sort of, how we can perceive the geological world and the human world as united or interconnected, that to me seems a question worth asking. And then you think about these sort of time scales, sort of geological time and human time, and I guess all of these thoughts are sort of wrapped up in making objects such as this here, which is part rock, and it's not actually flesh. It's actually wax and resin casts. But
thank you. I did wonder what it was made out of, so that's really interesting. Oops, there it is. Sorry, I just seem to, there we go, knocked something. Thank you very much. Peter, are you there?
Good evening, Claire.
Good evening, hello. This is just such an epic image. I am really envious. You must have been through some amazing places to take these photographs. Yeah, could you tell us about some of the places that you have been and where this image is taken, and also what we're seeing here?
Thank you. We've actually sailed past this a few times, and in different light, it's extremely different. It's very unmemorable. When we sailed past it this time, it was towards the end of summer. The sun was just setting for the first time after a couple of months. Rain or some clouds had just come through. They'd left some snow, and I thought with this, it was quite transient. It linked the two seasons. So some snow on the top of the mountain. It fits into the crevices. It slowly works its way down the hill. You can see the sedimentary rock on the right-hand side, and it's relatively young, 50 million years old for Svalbard. So it just all forms part of a process as it disappears into the sea. To give you an idea of the scale as well, the bottom left-hand corner, there's a hut there where there's some research scientists based themselves.
Brilliant. And for people who don't know, Svalbard is in the Arctic, yeah? Is that right?
So it's about 2 hours flying north from the very north of Norway. So it's about up to 80 degrees. So yeah, about 500 miles from the North Pole.
And I mean, some of the images that you have seem to really kind of highlight some of the environmental changes that we're seeing. Is that something you sort of seek to do with your work?
It is. I think one of the things that I can do with my photography is just been fortunate to travel to a number of places, maybe on the limits of where we would normally, as tourists, travel. But it's to highlight the beauty that we have. But unfortunately, at that time, it also exposes the truth about some of the damage that we're doing to these places. So through its beauty, I just want to highlight what we should be protecting and saving.
Thank you very much. That's great. And Catalina, you here again? Hello, hi. You've got this massive now pigment collection, and it looks like these are rocks that you've been collecting yourself and grinding. It would be great if you could share a little bit about how you've developed your pigment collection and why. What inspired you?
I have always been very interested in fossils, rocks, and color. And in 2015, I was quite worried about the environmental situation in the planet, so decided that I was going to stop using oil painting. I changed to egg tempera. I wanted to create a practice that was as environmentally neutral as possible. And I also decided to work only with natural materials. So I started in Colombia, going to a desert where I will collect rocks. And it's fascinating to, you know, the feeling of collecting a rock and going and processing this rock to become a pigment, which afterwards I will use in my paintings. So I start doing that. And from then on, I start to, everywhere I go, I start collecting rocks and creating pigments. I also create pigments by corroding metal powders to create different greens and blues. And I decided to do a pigment collection, which at the moment, I think I have over 200 pigments. I don't sell my pigments. I only collect a little bit that is enough to create my works. I do paintings and 3D works for the collection, and I also do exchange with other artists.
Thank you. And I understand that during this exhibition period, we're going to have a video showing your process of making pigments.
Yes, that's correct. On the 16th is coming a video. Is filmed actually in the location where I started collecting rocks in Colombia, and it shows the process of collecting the rocks and making pigments and also tints with different flowers and fruits.
Thank you. And it would be great just if you could say a little bit about how you then use the pigments to inform your works.
Yes, these pieces are very interesting because I made 2 new pieces for the exhibition. I don't have access to my studio at the moment, and I didn't have access to my pigments. So I started the lockdown doing lots of reading. And I came back to Robert Macfarlane book, Underland, yeah. And as I was reading the passage about underground, I started having these incredible visions of what I imagine will be to be in these places. And it brought memories from when I am in caves and volcanoes. So I had to order some material, and I decided to use the pigments that I use by corroding metal powders. So for the metal powders, I take the powders and with salt and vinegar, I corrode them until I create the colors that I need. For the rock pigments, I just crush the rock pigments and then mix them with whichever medium I want. As I said before, I am working with egg tempera. That means I take either the egg tempera, you take the York, and I also work with something called glaire that they use in the Middle Ages to do the manuscripts. I use the white part of the egg. I have to process it a little bit, and then I use that too. In this instance, I decided to use the glaire. Is a new approach to see what happened, and I think that it works quite well.
Yeah, they look amazing. Thank you very much. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
So, room 4, Life's Intimacies. This room touches flora and fauna, handling it delicately, carefully observing twisted bark, seaweed, shells, and insects, considering the cycles of life and death, using locally found scavenged materials to share momentary encounters. William assembles wild plants and materials on the body to create portraits of people and the environment. Helen took a minute's silence each day to notice nature in her surroundings. Trish considers the anatomy of ancient trees. Louisa becomes lost in a world of intricate observations. Catherine scavenges materials from her houseboat on the Thames to make tools and inks for painting. And Anne Laurie captures her momentary delight as a rainstorm breaks the intense heat of Mexico. So William, you there? Hello? You there, William? You're on mute. Don't know where he is. Oh, okay, maybe we've lost William. Oh, that's a shame. Oh, that's a shame. Okay, well, I'll go in the other room and see if I can find William. But in the meantime, he was our last speaker. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining. I wonder if I can now hand over to Geraldine and to Catherine, who are going to ask some of the questions that we've been getting from our viewers. That's all right.
Sure. Hi there. Yeah, we've been getting some fantastic feedback on the YouTube channel, which has been just amazing. We've got about 100 people watching. So thanks to everyone who's tuned in, and your support is really fantastic. So we've had some lovely comments. We've got one for Catalina. Somebody wanted to know how durable are your pigments? Someone called Styro X. Oh, we might need to unmute yourself.
Sorry, of course.
Thank you.
The raw pigments will never change. The colors will always stay like that. The metal pigments, they can't change. So I have been doing experiments, putting them through light, and then you can see how they change. Some of them will become much more pale. Some of them will disappear completely with time, which I like, because then you can do some pieces that don't stay forever. I like that. But for the big paintings, of course, I use the ones that don't fade, especially if you don't put them against the sun or in front of the sun, they will be fine. And the raw pigments will never change. They will stay like that forever.
Oh, that's fantastic, the enduring power of nature. That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you, Catalina. Yeah, we've got lots of very positive comments. And Lucy, we had a lot of lovely comments for you saying how that you really seem to touch a nerve with people about creating your own world in lockdown. So I don't know if you want to comment any further on that.
Well, it's very nice. It's very nice to hear that kind of positive feedback. So thank you very much. Yeah, I do think for a lot of people, there has been a real sense of frustration and confinement. And I do think this has been a very difficult time for a lot of people. So I'm pleased that in any way, me kind of trying to amplify that emotional experience within my practice and putting it back into a swimming film, I'm glad that has resonated with some people.
Yeah, thank you. Over to you, Geraldine. Geraldine, would you like to come in?
Yes. Yes, we have some questions here as well. We have quite a few for William, but he's not there. Let's see, we have for Simon, someone was very curious, someone called Eduard from Belgium. He wanted to know a bit more about what the role of time plays in your work, and you sort of addressed it, but maybe you can evaluate a bit more on he watched a little bit about your work on your website apparently, and he saw you tracing your rocks, and so when he saw that big rock, is something you could say a bit more about that?
Yeah, so the film I think I made, the film Genesis, which is on this exhibition, I think I made it in 2014. In a set, I mean, that specifically deals with time, as I tried to sort of describe earlier, because it juxtaposes sort of geological time and human time. It's also, I mean, it really is quite, I mean, I don't want to be too sort of specific, but it does for me feel quite like a sort of a self-portrait. I distinctly remember being halfway up a mountain, watching a tiny bit of heather being blown by wind, just the summer before I immersed myself into making that film. And I think there's something about sort of a quiet, sort of meditative space that one can be in, surrounded by ancient rock, where I at least sort of seem to sort of lose sense of my own sort of fleshy 53 years on the planet body and become something other or more connected. But I think what maybe what your questioner is also asking is, I have been dealing with it much more consciously, in the last year by making drawings to do with time. Literally, I've been tracing time, but I mean that's drawing shadows around rocks, which one can view easily on my Instagram links, but that's not part of this exhibition.
Thank you. No, that's really great, really interesting. So we've got quite a few questions coming in, and I see William, you're back. Great. Oh,
A new attempt to, there we go. Get the slides back up. Yay.
Sorry about that.
William, thank you so much for joining us again.
Rules of internet.
Oh yeah, no, we're all Zoom particularly. It's like so thank you. That's great that you've found your way back. Yeah, it would be really good just to hear a bit about where your inspiration comes from for these works.
Yes. Well, I mean, walking is a massive part of my practice. I kind of see the outdoor environment as my studio. It's a sort of place where I find most inspiration and I'm most stimulated. And these works have really come out of collaborations. I walk with people as well as on my own. And these images in particular were taken on location, like in specific sites after or during a walk with someone. There's sort of an invitation to collaborate with that person, and it's I mean, it's as you can see, they're quite engaged images, and they're using the plants and the natural materials that are found in that particular site.
Yeah, I thought that there must be some kind of collaborative element there, because he's got the fishes on his nose, so it's like he must have been quite up for something playful and involved, I guess. So yeah, it's really great to hear about the collaborative nature of your works. I also noticed just how there's a really good balance in the works between the human and the kind of the wild elements. I wondered if you could talk a bit about kind of what these are. Are these portrait, are they portraits, landscape paintings?
Yeah, I mean, I see them as sort of hybrids. They're kind of neither one nor the other. They're in a way, there's a sort of masking going on with these natural materials, but I suppose the core of where I'm coming from with the process and with the ideas behind the work is really thinking about nature as a complex, a series of complex relationships between humans and non-humans. And I'm really interested in the sort of the antithesis of the romantic view of nature being a sort of elegiac kind of just an incredibly I suppose just looking beyond the beauty of nature and looking at what is actually going on in the land, who is living, what is growing. So I've worked a lot with recently actually with asylum seekers in Ireland who have just sort of recently arrived, and I'm kind of interested in this sort of the tension really, I suppose, between what we consider to be native and non-native, and the kind of human and plant I suppose ideas around those concepts.
Okay, thank you. And while we've got you, Geraldine, you mentioned that there are some questions on the live stream for William. So while we've got you, can we ask a couple more questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I have to unmute my. There. Hi, Will. Yes, someone was. There was a couple of questions. They were all sort of similar about you bringing the human into the conversation, and whether there's in Scandinavia quite a tradition of having particularly the elderly immersing themselves in nature, and it's quite fascinating. And they bring people in location and use the vegetation and shells or rocks from that space, and they often disappear and you hardly see them anymore. But I was quite struck by how many elderly were taking part of this, and I wondered if you had any kinship with these type of artists in Scandinavia or this tradition. Could you tell us a bit more is it a Scandinavian tradition that you are aware of?
Not that I'm aware of. I know. I mean, my mother was Swedish, so I've got a strong kinship with Scandinavians. But I'm not aware of it being a tradition as such. Although there's obviously the very strong connection with nature through swimming, through hiking, through the kind of sauna culture, very elemental. So that's and I really grew up with my mum taking me out foraging, because that's a massive thing to kind of go into the woods and find mushrooms, berries. So that I grew up in Ireland, so she sort of brought that culture, or that, yeah, her sort of Scandinavian culture of foraging and really kind of looking at the environment in a particular way, finding the use as well as the beauty. It's like it can provide as well as be a something for the health or for enjoyment. So that's been really formative. So I think that's kind of fed into my engagement with nature and potentially into creating these works.
That is beautiful. And also there's a question from Christopher from Herefordshire, very particular. Okay. Thank you, Christopher, for this question. Which artists have inspired you? There is a little bit of, I always get the name wrong, Garibaldi, the one who makes the...
Yeah, Garibaldi, yeah.
Garibaldi, thank you.
Yes, I would say... he's always been a reference, and I really love the playfulness. I mean, I was kind of interested in reading about it recently again because it was painted really as a sort of a joke, an in-joke by the commissioners in Italy. It was a sort of sign of I suppose your knowingness and your worldliness to be able to laugh at yourself. So the people who commissioned him to do these portraits were often kind of royalty or lords, and so I was quite glad to see that. It was almost like there was a sort of humor, there was a sort of I suppose the differences between us in a way is we're in a completely different space historically. We're kind of post-Enlightenment. We're looking at living on a damaged planet, whereas at the time of Garibaldi's time in the sort of 17th century, it was the beginning of colonialism, and the bounty of what the Western world was accumulating. So they kind of existed at opposite ends of the spectrum, but do kind of reference each other. I mean, there's loads of influences, but I probably I'll go on too much.
Well, I think it's wonderful, beautiful what you've said, and I think that element of being serious and touching serious issues with humor is very powerful. And yeah, I think that immersiveness of immersing oneself in nature is beautiful, very successful, beautiful work.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. So I think we're at 8 o'clock now. So we've done our time. I wondered if there's any other burning questions, Geraldine and Catherine.
I'm just checking the.
Let us know. One. Yep, go on, Catherine. You're mute. Oh, mute.
There we go. Sorry. Yeah, one for you, and it's about meditation and the meditation practice in your work. And we've got a couple of meditations coming up over the next 3 weeks, led by one of the artists, and Laura Cree. Not saying the name right. And we've got a little apology to make to Caroline Ross. Sorry, I think she inadvertently got called Catherine earlier, but that's. I find that happens quite often, but apologies to her. But we've got some meditations coming up, which you're particularly interested in.
Yeah, so I've, I guess I have been trying to learn to still my mind a bit. So with my weavings, I noticed that initially they were very, very busy and intense, with lots of colours and complex patterns. And I wanted to try and make something much more soft and subtle and slower to read. And I realised that they really were reflecting what was happening in my mind at that time. And so to change the work, I needed to sort of change my mind. So I've been practicing meditation, you know, twice daily, and trying to find a space without thought, just to be, just to sort of have that feeling of being alive. And yeah, I found that really interesting and informs my practice. So yeah, it's great to hear that we've got some meditations coming up during the show. So.
Thank you, Claire. Yeah, it's on the 17th and the 24th. So if you check our events page on the website, there's a whole list of things that are happening every day. We've got artists sharing their practice. Thank you.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, well, thanks very much, everybody. Thanks for joining. I really want to say thanks to Geraldine, Catherine and Simon, who've been helping with the curation and doing loads of work. And thank you for taking all the questions tonight. Also to Helen and to Polly, who've been leading on the social media, and will be hopefully posting a lot of the artworks from the show over the coming weeks. Zoe, who has been helping with our design work, and Sam and Catalina and Luke for setting up the collective and bringing us together. All of the artists, thank you so much for taking part, and everybody for watching. So thank you, everyone, and good night. I think you need to stop the live stream now.